In 1993, Tony and Deborah Pickman moved into a quaint house in Atchison, Kansas, unaware of the dark history that awaited them. Shortly after settling in, their dog began growling at unseen entities, especially near the upstairs nursery. Lights flickered without cause, and cold spots emerged in various rooms. The couple dismissed these occurrences as quirks of an old house. However, as days turned into weeks, the unsettling incidents escalated, hinting at a presence that was anything but benign. As Deborah unpacked baby supplies in the upstairs nursery, she noticed the air felt unusually cold, despite the summer heat outside. Their dog refused to enter the room, whining and pawing at the hallway floor. Later that evening, Tony walked by the nursery and saw a small shadow dart across the room. They initially thought it might be a trick of the light, until the mobile above the crib began spinning violently on its own. The room, meant to nurture new life, instead carried the heavy weight of unseen eyes watching them. Tony began waking up with strange scratches on his chest and back, thin red lines, as if made by small fingers. At first, they blamed it on the dog or rough sheets, but the marks continued to appear in places he couldn't reach himself. One evening, as he sat in the living room, he felt an intense burning sensation on his stomach. Lifting his shirt, he and Deborah watched in horror as fresh scratches formed before their eyes. Whatever haunted them wasn't just watching, it was beginning to lash out. Determined to understand the cause of the strange activity, Tony ventured into the dark, unfinished basement, an area Deborah always avoided. The moment he stepped down, the temperature dropped drastically, his breath fogging in the air. He heard faint whispers echoing from the corners, as if several voices were murmuring just beneath hearing. Suddenly, a sharp pain lanced his arm. Tony ran upstairs and discovered another scratch, this one deeper. He began to realize that whatever was in the house didn't want him down there. Late one night, Deborah woke to the faint sound of giggling, high-pitched, childlike, echoing through the hallway. When she stepped out of the bedroom, the lights flickered. There, at the far end of the corridor, stood a little girl in a 19th-century white dress, barefoot and still. Deborah froze. The girl tilted her head slowly, then vanished into thin air. In that moment, the fear became real. This wasn't just a feeling or a shadow. The ghost of a child was roaming their home, watching. The next morning, Deborah noticed something alarming. Tony had deep red scratches across his back. But he had no memory of anything happening during the night. As she helped him out of bed, a chill swept through the room, and the closet door creaked open slowly by itself. Tony's pain grew sharper, almost as if something was still there, watching, waiting. The haunting wasn't limited to shadows and whispers anymore, it was turning violent. One quiet afternoon, Deborah lit a small candle on the living room table. As she stepped away, the flame began to grow, unnaturally tall, flickering wildly though no windows were open. Suddenly, the glass candle holder shattered, sending shards across the room. Deborah screamed as a book flew from the shelf and landed inches from her. It was as if something unseen had been watching, and didn't like the calm. The house wasn't just haunted, it was reacting. Tony was awakened by soft footsteps in the hallway, too light to be an adult's. He crept out of the bedroom, heart pounding. As he reached the dark hallway, a child's voice whispered behind him, "Come play with me." He spun around, but no one was there. The air grew icy. He turned back, and a small shadow darted past the doorway at the end of the hall. The voice echoed again, this time more urgent. The innocence was gone. It wasn't a child. Not anymore. The next morning, Tony groaned in pain as he sat up in bed. Deborah gasped, 3 deep, red scratches raked across his back. No memory, no dream to explain it. They looked fresh, angry. As she reached out to touch them, a sudden cold swept through the room. The couple stood frozen. This wasn't just a nightmare. Something in the house wanted them to feel vulnerable, even in sleep. And it was getting stronger. Determined to find answers, Tony descended into the cold, musty basement. The dim bulb barely lit the cracked concrete walls. Amid the clutter of old boxes and furniture, something caught his eye, a porcelain doll, half buried in dust. Its glassy eyes seemed to follow him. He bent down. The second he touched it, a violent crash echoed upstairs. As he sprinted back, the doll's face seemed to twist ever so slightly into a smirk. What was Sallie hiding in the darkness below? That night, Deborah flipped through an old photo album. She paused on a snapshot of Tony standing in the nursery, smiling. But something was off. Next to him, faint and blurred, stood the shape of a young girl in a white dress. Deborah's heart pounded. Just as she reached to show Tony, the photograph burst into flames in her hands. No lighter, no fire. Just ashes and the heavy, unmistakable scent of burnt paper. The house was no longer just haunted, it was watching. That night, Deborah flipped through an old photo album. She paused on a snapshot of Tony standing in the nursery, smiling. But something was off. Next to him, faint and blurred, stood the shape of a young girl in a white dress. Deborah's heart pounded. Just as she reached to show Tony, the photograph burst into flames in her hands. No lighter, no fire. Just ashes and the heavy, unmistakable scent of burnt paper. The house was no longer just haunted, it was watching. Desperate for answers, Tony and Deborah invited a psychic medium to the house. As soon as the woman stepped inside, she froze, eyes wide, trembling. "There's more than one spirit here," she whispered. "But the little girl, she's not what she seems." The room dropped in temperature, and the candles they had lit flickered violently. "You need to leave," the medium said, voice shaking. "This is not a child. It never was." It began with whispers. Soft, distant, almost like a child humming a lullaby. Tony would wake in the dead of night, hearing his name echoed faintly through the walls. Sometimes, it was crying. Other nights, laughter, high-pitched and unnerving. The sounds always came from behind the bedroom walls. They tore through drywall, rewired outlets, but found nothing. The sounds weren't in the walls, they were in the house. And they were getting closer. It all came to a head one stormy night. Tony was shoved violently to the floor, no one near him. Lights exploded overhead, and a chilling wail echoed through the entire house. Deborah screamed as a black shadow darted down the hallway. That was it. No more tests, no more documenting. With trembling hands and pounding hearts, they fled into the rain. They left behind everything, except the scars. The house still stands, but few dare to stay. Because Sallie never left. The Sallie House remains one of America's most terrifying haunted homes, its history soaked in mystery, pain, and fear. If you ever visit Atchison, Kansas, you'll find the house still there, but don't be surprised if you feel watched. Was it the spirit of a child, or something much darker? That's for you to decide. If this story chilled you, don't forget to subscribe to Only True Horror, and hit the bell icon. And if you dare, the full story source is linked in the description below. Sleep tight.